guiding hand in the fist, the tower, and then squishing down into a cookie, okay? For opening, we have the thumb totally in contact with the piece and centering to press down, and then the little like pulling hook, we'll call it. How about that? So we get down and we make a hook with our hands, and then we pull out towards ourselves, meet our thumb on the other side to a claw so we can see how thick we are. So with bringing up the walls, the way we start is whatever hand feels comfortable. At this point, you can switch axes if you really want to and have it go in the opposite direction. There is going to be an outside hand and an inside hand. You always want the clay to be coming out from you. If it's coming into you, it's going to be forcing your hands this way, and that's not going to help anybody. So we want the clay to be coming out, whatever. So
whatever side you're going to be pulling the wall, you want it to be the one that's moving away from you.
Yes, you do. Exactly. There are so many ways to compress walls and bring it up. This is the best way that I've found. I'm going to be using this entire flat plane of my index finger here, right up against the side. That keeps it nice and stable. It allows me, if I'm pushing from the inside, to have a nice flat surface that keeps it from, you know, flanging out. And if I'm pushing inwards, it still gives me a lot of stability. The inside hand, it'll be more working with your fingertips of 2 or 3 fingers, but you're basically aiming to meet the pressures in this fashion. So this is your wall position. Flat finger on the outside, and then sort of a curved taper on the inside.
So that finger doesn't have to be in plane with your arm like it does before, like a straight
right.
line.
There's no straight line happening here because the clay isn't like forcing us around anymore. It is centered, and this is a whole new bird now. Our objective is to create a wall by compressing in and pulling up. So the way that walls are made is in the basic 3 moves. The first one is, all right, so I've got my stable guy on the outside. I'm going to start pushing in,
so
and at the same time,
the inside hand is doing most of the movement, and the other one's going to be anchored?
Yes. So just in what I did you see what happened? I was just very gently starting to press with both of them. I'm also using, I mean, it's not just the fingertips here curled inside. It ends up being like all 3 of these, my pads are somewhere on the inside because this isn't, you know, it's not a straight angle. It's kind of just guiding it. But also this part of my index finger on the inside is doing the force. So really it's kind of like this, only it's more, like this one is always going to be kind of straight on. And in here you can play with it a lot more. This is the part where it becomes sort of your own process. You're going to find the most comfortable way to do this, but the main meat of it all is that you're compressing inwards and moving up with it. So I'm going to compress on both sides nice and evenly, just like the tower. I'm not doing more work with one or the other. They're kind of guiding each other, and as I get more and more rotations through, I'm going to bring myself up. So this is called my first pull. Now, as I get closer to the top, I'm not pushing in more. I want this to be a nice even wall. So for instance, where yours get really thin on top, there will be absolutely no pressure applied to the top. After you do a pull, as that's called, your next step, which is the next posture, is to work your lip. That is, the same index finger here is going to rest directly on top. And then you're going to do a little pinch with the other hand right up against here. So you're making like a little C, just like this. And what that does is gives you stability with this hand. You're holding your wall, not pinching, just holding it. And then you can bring a little bit of force down with your index finger, and that flattens everything out. You can even push down a little bit more to make sure it stays thick. So that's the big thing that you can work on. If that lip in any part of your process gets too thin, you go right into lip posture and you get it nice and flat. This also, when a piece is not centered and we're working, the first thing to show that it's not centered is that lip is all over the place. So by doing that move, it stabilizes everything. And after every pull, it's so important to do that, because if you wait to the very end, you're gonna end up with a wonky lip. There are ways to fix that, but it also, doesn't allow you to make sure that your walls are even throughout the whole piece. Okay, so once we do one pull, we think, well, I want to get this into a nice tall cylinder, I can come in and do my little cleanup move with my sponge, pressing into my wall a little bit. That even might get me this little divot, which is excellent. Because you don't, the last thing you want is for clay to be flanging onto your bat. That's space that will, your eye can't see. Where does my wall actually begin if I have this weird, plate happening down there? I want everybody to come put their hands on my piece and just very gently go from the bottom up. You will feel that what? Tell me what you feel.
Thick.
Thicker on the bottom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it gets thin to the top?
Yeah, but not too much.
Exactly. So the first thing we do is we establish our lip thickness. I might want to go a little bit thinner than this. So we work in thirds. We do the top third first, and then we go a little bit farther down to the bottom. And then our last move should be making that bottom thickness match everything else. All right, so I've got the same posture. I'm coming in up top, and I'm pressing in on either side. So I've got a good thickness there. Now, if it's taller, then you'll have to, come up with it, but that's kind of exactly the length of my finger parts there. And I'll do my lip check. You can also, at this point, very gently actually pinch with these fingers, because you might have a hard time keeping your fingers perfectly parallel. You might end up doing something like this or something like this, and so that lip check also makes you realize what you just did with your fingers. So everybody come feel that real quick.
So that's thinner then.
That's the part I'm trying to match with everything else. Now, you see how much water I have pooled down there? I want to get that out throughout my time. I've already compressed my bottom, and if I let water sit in there, it's just going to permeate the clay and make it weaker. So we just want to keep that in mind. All right, so now I'm going to do my bottom 2/3. I'm going to start a little lower, start pinching in, and then start moving up. And I'll feel when I hit that section I did before, because it's so much thinner. So now I know, all right, you can even go down again to make sure you're checking it proper. That's the same thickness throughout. I get to a certain point, I pull up, and I follow through, and I do my lip check. Everybody come feel that.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's time to go all the way down to the bottom and make sure I'm matching that. Get some moisture in there, going all the way down to the bottom, to the point where my finger is on the bat. Even though inside, it obviously doesn't go all the way down to the bat. So I'm going to start compressing on the outside and on the inside towards each other. And then I'll slowly move my outside hand up so the pressure is even, and then move both hands up together, and then I can feel where that transition is. I will go down and check it again to make sure that I've gotten it all. This time I might even press more on the inside, since, outside I can see. My wall is perfectly straight, but I can also see that it kind of tapers in on the inside. So I'm going to adjust my pressure, so I'm actually pushing more from the inside and just keeping it stable on the outside. Match my fingers, bring them up, and follow all the way through, all the way to the top, and then you can really feel everything is nice. Check that lip. And there we go. Go ahead and feel that, guys. You can even get them with both hands and bring it up and really feel what's happening in there.
Oh, wow.
So you feel how much more even that is?
Yeah.
The reason why we start from the top to the bottom instead of from the bottom up is if that lip is actually thicker than any of your wall beneath it, that's going to create weird torque. That's when you end up pulling top sections off your piece.
the whole thing flipped right off.
So that's why we work to get this exactly where we want it, and then make everything else come up to meet it. So we never really have to change this ever again. At this point, we can do things like, cleaning up the bottom, but even more extreme. Like I'm going to come in with my sponge, but I'm going to start pressing towards my wall. And that gives me a nice little divot. That way when I go to run my wire underneath this piece, I'll have a place to go. If it's doing that flange, that wire could rise up and cut through the piece. To show you what's happening, I'm actually going to cut this in half so we can take a look at the wall thickness throughout. And I recommend you actually do this with your first piece too. It might like hurt your heart a little bit because you work so hard on it, but this is all a learning process. So I'm just gonna go straight down.
All that work.
And cut it out. Check that out. So you can see my bottom's still a little thick. So that means I can definitely work on it. Because of how I cut it, I actually like cut up into this clay, so my bottom would have been a little bit thicker than it is at this point. But this is kind of what you're looking for. At least a nice stable taper up to where you want the thickness to be. This tells me that I definitely want, if I want consistent walls, I can really do more work on that bottom and pull it up. That will come with practice. Everybody's first pots are always going to have thicker bottoms, and that's actually better because it gives the pot more stability. As long as the majority of your wall is the same thickness, that's what we're shooting for. Does that make sense to everybody? Any questions?